All right, we'll be back to more commercials that Vic and I didn't do. We're sitting here going, why didn't we get that job?
I can sing.
18 after 7 o'clock. We're with the veteran Golden Age of radio actor Vic Perrin.
On NBC, there was a show called Homicide O'Kane. And it was written by a guy who used a pen in one hand and a bottle in the other. and it was due on the air at 3:15 in the afternoon. By 3:10... he had maybe 6 of the 8 pages written. And while the show was on the air, he'd be typing away. They'd be rushing the carbons and the originals into the studio, and he never missed closing a show. He always managed to get the last page in time.
What did you do with the bottle?
Well, I think...
Maybe the show and the bottle finished about simultaneously. Who knows?
I'll be darned.
Thanks for your call this evening.
Fascinating stories. Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. How are y'all? This is yours truly, Alan Freed. Get your dancing shoes on, and welcome to the Camel Rock and Roll Dance Party.
From New York City, the home of rock and roll, we welcome you to the big beat in popular music in America, brought to you transcribed by Camel. Today's best light cigarette. Camels give more pure pleasure to more smokers today than any other brand. And here's the king of rock and roll himself, Alan Freed.
Thank you, Vern Bennett, and welcome to our Camel Rock and Roll Dance Party, starring one of the greatest names in music, the swingin'est band in the land, Count Basie and his orchestra, with Joe Williams, and our special guest stars of the week, Laverne Baker and the Teenagers. And away we go. First up, Count Basie and the orchestra with You for Me.
Get him, Count!
April 8th's Fort Laramie episode was preempted to cover the final round of golf's Masters tournament, which was won by Jack Burke Jr. The following Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern, a new rock and roll program debuted on CBS. It was hosted by Alan Freed, sponsored by Camel, and just another sign that the times were a-changin'. The days of orchestral remotes were long over. The next afternoon, Fort Laramie broadcast Stagecoach Stop. By 1956, many of the West Coast radio actors were also doing TV and film work. Each episode of Fort Laramie was rehearsed and recorded in a single evening at CBS's Studio One. Like Gunsmoke, Fort Laramie had strong female roles, realistic and sympathetic portrayals of Native Americans, and an emphasis on life's frontier struggles.
At the gallop! Oh!
Fort Laramie.
Fort Laramie, starring Raymond Burr as Captain Lee Quince. Specially transcribed tales of the dark and tragic ground of the wild frontier. The saga of fighting men who rode the rim of empire. And the dramatic story of Lee Quince, Captain of Cavalry.
Easy, boy. Feels good, don't it?
You got the whole day, Harrison?
Oh, I'm moving, Sergeant.
Well, that mount will chill and die of pneumonia. You don't rub him brisk and get some elbow grease behind it.
Yes, sir, Sergeant. Why you suppose he does it, Sergeant?
Who does what?
Captain Quince. Up for reveille he was, and off and riding.
Habit, maybe. It was a clean morning, had a feel to it. Riding off alone, I'd like that myself.
Ooh-wee. There's a touch of spring in there, all right. Buffalo grass as green as can be. I was down at the corral this morning, and even at low water, the old Laramie was rippling along like it had a song in it.
Harrison.
Yes, Sergeant?
You think you could manage to blanket that mount before you write your next poem?
Oh, I guess I'm holding you up.
Captain says he threw a nail. I told him I'd see the farrier got a look at it.
Right forefoot, looks like. I meant to see to it.
I got business at the saddlery anyway.
Sergeant, I'd sure admire some outdoor duty today, if you could arrange it.
Stable details, sort of outdoors, Harrison. In and out.
I was thinking more like the hay yard, or lending a hand in the post garden, or like that. I'd be obliged.
Anything outdoors?
Anything at all, Sergeant.
You see up there on the bluff by the old cemetery?
I'm looking that way.
That white patch, top of the rise?
Oh, sure. I see that.
Well, now, that's a patch of wild daisies, Harrison. Anybody asks, you tell them you got my leave to go up there and pick them.
Oh, Sergeant.
It's outdoor work.
I don't aim to get myself laughed right off this post.
It'd be a useful service you was performing, Harrison. Officers are having a fancy ball tonight at Old Bedlam. Well, they might give a stripe or two to the trooper who saw to their decorations.
I tell you, Sergeant, I like this stable detail just fine. More I think of it, more I like it.
Glad to oblige. Anytime, Harrison.
And I get me 3 stripes someday, like as not, I'll mosey all over the post, too, on a fine spring day.
I could make them daisies in order, Harrison.
Why, look down there, Sergeant Gorse. Ain't that a stage coming over the bridge?
It is. Well, he's riding on a flat wheel.
Yeah, maybe that's why he's pulling into the fort this time of day.
Being the wheelwright's so near the smithy and the saddlery, I'll just mosey on down there and see what's going on. Give me that lead rope, soldier.
No, here.
Get to your duty, Daisy.
Oh, yes, Sergeant.
And speaking of that, reminds me of Jack Johnstone.
Oh, yeah.
For whom we did so many shows in New York. I did the Philip Morris show with Jack, and of course he did things with great style. Mm-hmm. He always had his earphones, and he was on the stage, and he conducted from the stage. Mm-hmm. And of course those audience shows were packed with people around the block waiting to get into those huge theaters. But John and Jack we all played poker together, and he was very close to Jack, and Jack said, I'll tell you in a minute. And he brought out this little black notebook about that big. And John said, well, what is it? And he said, every cent I make is put here. And he said, this is the most legitimate thing to present to the income tax. And if you have saved every one of those little books that has subway fare, hamburger, Liebes's down below CBS, NBC, every single cent he had written down. And I must say that when our grandson last year in the Yak found a little book that had kind of a lid on it. It was not really a book, it was a fake book, and you lifted it up, and it was full of those little books.
Yeah?
Just like Jack Johnstone had told John about. And so here, as Luke looked in, he said, look at this, Grandma, 20 cents cab from our apartment to NBC. You know, and he had kept that record.
But what do you mean we'll have to put up here for the night? This is an army post. Now, Opie, settle yourself this minute. There's nothing but men here.
Now, ma'am, there ain't a stage built that'll run on 3 wheels.
But an army post? Why, we're women.
Well, be that as it may, we gotta put up here. It took all I had and then some to bring us clean to the fort. Now, the wheelwright tells me he can put us on the trail by sunup, and that's the level best we can do.
I declare, I don't know what. Homer off there in Virginia City, waiting for Opie and me?
Well, you could maybe telegraph ahead if you think your husband will worry after you.
Well, I don't know what to make of you. Of course he'll worry. Homer's bound to worry. His wife and baby girl spending the night in the middle of nowhere at an army post.
Oh, Ma.
Opie, if you Ma me once more, I'll bang you with my umbrella.
Oh, but there's one, Ma, coming right up to us.
One what?
A soldier, Ma.
Oh, Sergeant Gorse.
Stand right behind me, Opie.
Wheelwright says you got trouble, Clay.
Yeah, all kinds, Sergeant. Oh, meet up with Mrs. Kleinhexel. Her daughter, Miss Opie, Sergeant Gorse.
Ma'am? Miss Opie?
Are you in charge here, young man?
Well, no, ma'am. Not exactly.
Then I demand to be taken to whoever is. I want to telegraph Homer. I want to see with my own eyes the quarters for my daughter and me.
Homer, ma'am?
That's Mr. Kleinhexel. He's in Virginia City.
Oh.
Are you listening to me, young man?
Why, yes, ma'am. I do. Clay, where you going?
Well, I'm pretty sure that wheelwright needs a hand. I sure thank you for taking over this way, Sergeant.
Hey, now, Clay,
We've had no food since breakfast, young man. That'll have to be taken care of. Now, those carpet bags over there are ours, and they were brand new when we left Omaha. So, mind you, tend them easy. Who did you say was in charge here?
Well, I didn't say, ma'am, but offhand, I'd say you was.
Opie, simmer down.
Featured prominently in this episode were Jeanette Nolan, Howard McNear, Jack Kruschen, and Shirley Mitchell.
In studio with us tonight in Los Angeles, we have Shirley Mitchell, whose credits include being Alice Darling on the old Fibber McGee and Molly program, also telephone operator Mabel on Jack Benny's radio and TV show, and Shirley Whirley on Joan Davis and Rudy Valley, plus Leela Ransom, the Southern Widow, on The Great Gildersleeve. Good to have you with us, Shirley.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
And also Jack Kruschen, who was just telling me... Who? I have no idea. The man has no credentials whatsoever. Only 50 years in this business.
Mm-hmm.
When will you have the 50-year mark, Jack?
50 years, September of next year, September of '88.
Who has covered some great ground. You, by the way, might be familiar
and some
with him.
rotten ground, too.
Well, all ground is good ground if the paycheck doesn't bounce. You're on Webster as Papadopoulos, right?
Papadopoulos,
yeah,
right.
And also you've got your work in Rags to Riches. You were nominated for Academy Award, I believe, in The Apartment. Is
That's
that correct?
Right. You shouldn't forget, because once again, look at the pictures we drew. You know, just hearing voices.
I could see those people.
Mm-hmm. That's it. And you could hear the people in the background investigating the scene of the crime. It was, things were done so well. And the unobtrusive sound effects. And the fact that people did take time to listen to one another when they were speaking to one another. It's very unlike a lot of acting today, where, particularly visually,
Absolutely.
there's a feeling that people really don't listen. They just say words. And here in radio, you have to listen, you have to respond, and you have to think. And so, you hear all those sighs and you hear all that heavy breathing, and it's the way people talk. It's the way we speak to one another. It's the way we speak to one another in everyday life. And consequently, when you did that in radio, people listening would believe.
Mm-hmm. Overlapping the whole
everything.
Thing. Yeah.
If it was necessary, sure to overlap.
Do you have to be, do you think, a better actor or actress to do radio?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Really? Because everything was voice?
Well, a lot of film actors couldn't do radio, so that indicates to you right then. I mean, they literally were not able to transpose the word into any sense.
And
right?
it wasn't so much that they couldn't read, because that was a problem with some people who cannot. I don't mean that they didn't know how to read.
They knew how to read,
I meant that reading words off of a piece of paper become traumatic for some people, so that they lose the trend of what they're trying to do or trying to say. Whereas those of us who were fortunate enough to work in the business regularly had a certain, I don't know what you'd call it. The word isn't talent either. It's facility. We had a facility to read the words off the piece of paper, make sense out of them, as Shirley just said, and also to make them mean what the character meant, so that we were able to become performers in the body of the script and in the body of the character we were playing. How else could many of us have done multiple characters?
We couldn't, I mean, the face and the body didn't go with the voice and the character that we were playing. There were no boundaries to radio acting. If you had the voice and if you had, I think, the talent, let's be honest.
But the facility to read was part of the talent.
And I just wondered if you were in my position, what would you do, Captain?
What?
What would you do?
I'm afraid I haven't been listening, Mr. Syberts. Sorry. What would I do about what?
Would you go alone if you didn't have a young lady to escort? To the officers' ball tonight.
Good Lord, I'd forgotten about that.
It's the first one since I've been here.
If you're smart, you'll get up a poker game. You could play right here in my quarters if you want.
Well, I was rather looking forward to the ball.
I'd sooner ride into an ambush.
You know, it's hard to picture in your mind a ball right here in Old Bedlam. It doesn't seem part of the West somehow.
It shouldn't be part of it. You want a cigar, Syberts?
No, thank you, sir. Captain, you don't talk like you're planning to attend this evening.
I'm not.
You sure?
Mr. Syberts, the last ball I attended was on an order. Besides, I have some work I want to do tonight, if I can get the Major's permission.
Well, I don't know, and it's your business, all right, sir, but she thinks you're going to the ball.
She?
Miss Willa. I was over at the sutler store this morning, and Pliny, Mr. Burgess, gave me his leave to ask Miss Willa to the ball.
Well?
But she means to go with you, Captain.
I don't know why. I didn't ask her.
She seems right sure you will, though, before the day's out.
Oh?
She seems content just to wait for you.
Miss Willa's a pretty thing. She makes a mistake, though, waiting for anyone.
Captain, I wouldn't have asked her, but there aren't many single ladies to choose from.
I've got no claim on Miss Willa, Mr. Syberts, if that's what you mean.
No, it's more her claim I was thinking about. She's set on you, Captain Quince.
That's a pure waste. Oh, is it?
Captain Quince, Lieutenant Syberts.
Major Daggett.
Sir.
As you were, gentlemen. This isn't exactly official business.
Yes, sir.
I just looked in the ballroom on the way up. Looks like things are taking shape for tonight.
Yes, sir, they are. Mrs. Daggett and the other wives are doing a fine job with the decorations.
Well, they enjoy that sort of thing. It's time we had some festivity around here.
Yes, sir.
That what you came to tell us, Major?
I expect to see you both there, Captain Quince.
There's something I want to talk to you about, Major.
Both of you there. I don't know whether you've heard yet or not, but we have some guests on the post. Mrs. Kleinhexel from Omaha and her daughter. Their stage broke down. They'll be with us overnight.
The daughter, sir.
What about her, Mr. Syberts?
Well, sir, in the interest of showing Fort Laramie's hospitality, what I mean is, if she's not otherwise engaged, I'd be proud to see her to the ball tonight.
I think that's a good idea, Syberts.
I would like to discuss something, Major.
Yeah, so would I, Captain Quince.
Then if you'll excuse me, Major, Captain.
Mr. Syberts, you'll find the young lady and her mother quartered next to the sutler store.
Yes, sir.
Well, Lee?
If we can forget that pink tea a while, Major.
I told you, Lee, I expect you at that ball tonight. This is no mere whim of mine, and if I have to order you to be there, I will.
We're not going to see eye to eye on that ever.
You understand all about troop morale in the field. I never knew an officer to show greater concern for his men. But I think you owe something to your fellow officers, Captain.
What do you mean?
There's such a thing as post morale, too. The junior officers admire you, they respect you.
It'll mean something to them to see you sharing their off-duty entertainment, relaxation. You're a hard man to know, Lee.
Especially in a ball.
I wouldn't insist if I didn't think it was important.
I've been trying to tell you what I think's important ever since you came in.
All right.
Yellow Horse. He's still in the stockade.
Yes, I know that. But I can't send him to Leavenworth till I receive orders from Washington. So far, they haven't come through.
Can't you telegraph Washington?
In an emergency.
His renegade band of Sioux is still marauding.
Tell me, does this have any connection with the fact that you left the post alone before Reveille this morning?
I rode out to the reservation. Had a long talk with Eagle Wing.
I hope he understood it was unofficial, Captain.
Eagle Wing and I talked only as men interested in peace.
Well, at least he isn't a hostile. And no great friend of Yellow Horse, as I remember.
He says a few of Yellow Horse's old band have come onto the reservation in the last few weeks. That could mean trouble, Major.
A few hostiles on a reservation of 4,000? I don't think so, Captain.
I'm not talking about a Sioux uprising. I'm talking about maybe 6 hostiles thinking to set Yellow Horse free.
Eagle Wing said this?
I say it. It could happen.
Suppose it could. I don't think it's likely.
I do. This band's never had a leader like Yellow Horse. He never killed for gain or because the whites invaded his hunting grounds. He killed to kill because he loved to kill. He's their inspirational leader. They'll come after him.
All right, Lee. What is it you want?
Move Yellow Horse.
Move him?
Yeah, over to Fort Kearny. Small details starting at dusk.
I don't like it, Lee.
He'd be that much closer to Leavenworth.
No, I can't risk it. I'm on orders to secure Yellow Horse at Fort Laramie. I'd need more reason than you give me to go against him.
Then I've said my piece, Major.
Lee, you feel pretty keenly about this. Why?
Maybe it's not important.
I asked you a question.
All right. Call it a symbol. We could have killed him when we took him. But we held something out to the Indians. A fair trial. White man's justice.
Yellow Horse was tried fairly.
And sentenced fairly. The Indians know that. Yellow Horse should pay for his killing. Legally. If an escape is arranged, even if he's killed in the attempt, he's a martyr to every red man because a white man killed him.
Sure, I don't disagree with any of that, Lee.
But your answer's still the same.
It has to be. My orders are clear. I have to respect them. I wish I could count on your understanding.
I wish I could give it to you, Major.
All right, Captain. We both had our say. Now let's forget it. I'd like you to join my party this evening.
That an invitation, sir?
That is an order, Captain.
Yes, sir.
Nearly all the scripts were written by either John Meston, Kathleen Hite, John Dunkel, or Les Crutchfield.
I first came to know Les when he was still working at Caltech as an engineer. But at that time, which must have been 46 or 47, he came in to see Bill Robeson with a script for a Columbia workshop, which Bill bought, and Les was on his way toward being a very successful writer. Les worked with me on Escape, Romance, a number of shows. And when we did start Gunsmoke, it just was obvious that Les would have to be part of the family, which indeed he was.
But radio was changing, as John Dunkel remembered.
I think that the decisions are made now by people who really have no training or understanding in the creative fields. They are mostly businessmen. Their only concern is economic. And the young people who move into the so-called creative spots, I don't know how they're supposed to have the understanding to do it because they have no training. They have no background at all in creative work. They don't understand writing. They don't understand directing. They don't understand anything about it. It's all economic. And this began back in those days. It began with the great importance placed upon the sales department.
Howard liked to nip a little bit, didn't he? And we used to do two Gunsmoke shows. And after we finished the first one, we would break for lunch, and we'd all go over to Nicodell. But before we broke for lunch, Howard would take the second script and thumb all the way through it to see how many lines he had in the next show. If he only had a short scene, he could have 3 martinis. If he had a load to carry, he'd limit it to 1. But that determined how much he was going to have at lunch.
We used to have to ad-lib in the lineup. We were in the audience and we'd ad-lib for the lineup. Correct me if I'm not exactly right on this. Do you remember what he said about his son?
Oh, yeah, we had to ad-lib in the background. He ad-libbed to me. It nearly caused me to miss a cue where he said, "I'm so upset and so nervous." And I said, "Why is it? It's my boy. It's his first time on the stage, you know." All this while we were out there. We came back from one of those days when he didn't have too much to do in the second show, and he had 3 Bloody Marys. He said, I think I should have some food on my stomach, don't you? And I said, I think it'd be a good idea. So we ordered a pot of tea and some cinnamon toast. And as we were walking back to the studio, he said, "Have you got a jelly cell?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" "My stomach's burning." He said, "I don't know what possessed me to order cinnamon toast."
He was wonderful.
Well, I wouldn't have believed it. It's a regular store.
Yes.
I declare, Mr. Burgess, it's the equal of anything we have in Omaha.
Oh, yes, it is. Chicago, New York, Boston. Yeah. Pliny Burgess bows to no one when it comes to merchandise.
Now, this bowl of cloth. Ophi, just look at the quality.
Those threads. Pure gold, madam. Pure gold.
Why, there's no such thing.
Well, in color, I mean. Yes, pure gold.
Oh, well, yes. I see they are. Ophi, will you stop clutching me so?
Look, Ma, it's another one.
Oh, my. Well, he's just another soldier, Ophi. You'd best get used to the sight of them. They're all over out here.
Afternoon to you, Captain Quince.
Miss Willow around, Pliny?
To the back, with the account books as usual, Captain.
Thank you.
My sakes, he's a big one.
Yeah, oh, yes, he is.
Now, Ophi, you stop making eyes this minute. You've been spoke for by that other one, and he's a lieutenant.
Lovely girl. Shy, but she's a lovely girl.
Miss Willow.
Well, yes.
I have a good account, right?
Hello, Lee.
Hello.
Well, come on in.
If you're busy, why, we can forget about it.
No, you'll not get off that easy. I'm not busy, and I've been expecting you.
You shouldn't wait for me, Willa. You know that.
Sit down, Lee.
Thanks.
I don't wait for you. As you say, I know better than that. I wait for Major Daggett.
How's that?
Sooner or later, he always orders you to attend the ball. And when he does, sooner or later, you decide you'd rather escort me than dance with ranking officers' wives the entire evening.
That the way it is?
I'm afraid so. But that's not a complaint. I'll be ready at 8.
All right.
Well, don't look so trapped, Lee. You're not, you know.
I wasn't thinking about me.
Don't worry about me. I understand. It's a lovely day. It'll be a lovely evening, Lee.
Yeah. It looks like Mr. Syberts is going to have a lovely evening, too.
Oh, poor Ophi.
Poor Syberts. You could have spared him that if you'd accepted him instead of waiting around for...
For Major Daggett.
Yeah. Yeah, for Major Daggett.
Good heavens, what...
Madam, please.
Get him
off! You're perfectly safe, madam. Now,
Me no do nothing. Walk in store, do nothing.
We'll be killed. We'll all be killed.
What's wrong out here?
Oh, I got an awful fright. Get him out of here.
Take the girl, Willis.
Come along, Opie. It's all right.
Yes, tell her it's all right, Captain. It's the engine. She's not used to the sight of him.
Captain, white woman, bad spirit.
No, White Bird. She's just frightened.
White Bird frightened too. Him do nothing.
He walked in here. Big as life. That's what he did. Right in the store, mind you, like he was a
Human being?
Yes. Like he was a human being.
Is that all he did?
Well, yes. But if I hadn't cried the alarm, we'd have all been massacred. That's what they do, you know.
White Bird go. Come later to trade.
Well, now, you bring silver and more blankets, Whitebird?
Trade for food. Come back later when bad spirit and white woman go.
Well, I never. You people dealing with him, trading like he was a...
He's a reservation Indian, ma'am. He's all right.
Oh, yes. I would like to look at what he has to offer, Captain.
Well, go on into the storeroom. Make your trades.
Yes, sir.
Go on. It's all right, Whitebird.
Why, of course. Come on, Whitebird. Come on.
And see you trade him fair, Pliny.
Oh, I'm the soul of honor, Captain.
Yeah. You, feel better, ma'am?
You've done nothing to make me feel better. I see you're mighty solicitous about your savage in there. And not so much as a kind word for a frightened white woman.
Sorry, ma'am. We know Whitebird. He's our friend. We've lived with him. But we've no mind to be unkind to strangers.
You mean to say that Indians have the run of this fort, young man?
Some Indians, the ones we know and trust. Ones who trust us. You'll find that in the West.
But what about all the killing? The massacres, that's all you hear in Omaha and near all you read. How many whites the red savages have murdered. Now I say that's true or it isn't.
Some of it is, ma'am. Indians are like us. There's good and bad. We've got a bad one on the post, Yellow Horse. But he's in the stockade.
That's as it should be. You think that, don't you?
I think that.
Well, it's a pity you can't tell by looking.
Oh, you can sometimes if you know what to look for. But that comes with knowing folks. White men or red men.
Face value. It's a risky business, young man. Many's the time I've been dead wrong in judging a body, on first sight, I mean. Of course, I'm talking about white folks.
You planning to live in the West, ma'am?
Virginia City. Homer's out there now. Opie and me are going to him. Sakes, I guess I got a lot of learning ahead of me. A lot of learning.
Most stories do end rather tragically and sad. Despite the propaganda in the great United States of America, no, most people those days had sad endings. Or a great number of them did. Jesus. It was a hard life. Didn't live very long. While they lived, it was pretty rough. And the brutality and the violence. You talk about violence these days. The violence in those days was rampant. My God, the violence. The poor way of life. You know, no medicine, no sanitation, not much of anything. A lot of heat and sand and little water, not much food. It's been romanticized fairly well. Maybe that answers the question. I don't know. It didn't romanticize it so much.
Sergeant? Over here, Sergeant.
Oh, yes, sir. Captain?
Finished eating, Gorse?
Yes, sir. Ate plenty, too. Good thing I got no bars on my shoulders. I'd be right too stuffed to waltz tonight.
That's so?
Fine spring evening for a flock of fancy waltzes, though.
All right, Sergeant, you're making your point.
Yes, sir.
You, got any plans for tonight after tattoo?
Oh, I drew some duty, Captain.
Duty?
Kind of special duty, too. Orders come down from Major Daggett to double the guard at the stockade. I figured you'd know that.
No. No, I didn't.
Ain't they sending Yellow Horse on to Leavenworth before long?
That's up to Washington.
Yeah. Sure got a lot of time back there, ain't they, Captain?
Seems like it. Sometimes.
Did you have something you wanted me to do tonight?
No. No, nothing.
Well, before I told you about the duty, you asked about my plans, Captain.
You answered my questions.
Yes, sir.
That's all, Sergeant.
If anything comes up at the stockade, I'll see you hear about it, sir.
You'll report to Major Daggett.
Yes, sir.
Good night, Gorse.
Captain?
Yeah?
It's a right smart sash you're wearing.
Good night, Gorse.
Yes, sir.
She's been trying to get your attention for the last half hour, Lee.
Who has?
Mrs. Kleinhexel, and you haven't even asked her to dance yet either.
I know, but I...
Shh, here she comes.
Excuse me, you two, but I've got to have word to this young man. I'm sending the lieutenant to dance with you, dearie.
Captain Quince was just on his way over to you, Mrs. Kleinhexel. I'll find Lieutenant Sybers.
Well, shall we, Captain?
Proud to, ma'am.
I could waltz with a glass of water on my head and never spill a drop. That's what Homer always says.
You try it with me, ma'am. You stand a chance of drowning.
Oh, there's good humor in you, young man. I like that.
Thank you.
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I wanted to tell you, I went out on the veranda for a breath of air a while back. And when I first saw them, I came near to screaming like I did this afternoon with the other Indian.
You're developing a real eye for Indians, ma'am.
Yes, I am. I've been trying to recollect, though. I don't believe he was wearing them in the store today.
White Bird? Wearing what?
The feathers.
No, ma'am, he wasn't wearing feathers.
I didn't think so. Now, these Indians was. Well, maybe it suits their fancy.
You're sure they were wearing feathers?
I just told you. There was 5 or 6, I guess.
Excuse me, ma'am. I have to speak to the major.
Now, what's wrong with feathers?
Major Daggett, sir! Where are those shots coming from, Captain?
That's the stockade, Major. Sybert! Lawson! Let's go! Six of them. All dead, Sergeant?
Dead Injuns, Captain. Good thing you doubled the guard, Major.
What about Yellow Horse?
Oh, he was whooping for a while. But I checked him. He's got his health, all of it.
Captain.
Yes, sir?
Fall in a detail. I want Yellow Horse on his way to Leavenworth no later than noon tomorrow. Any questions?
Just one, sir. What about Washington?
I'll telegraph Washington tonight. Oh, Captain.
Yes, Major.
Thank you.
Fort Laramie is produced and directed by Norman MacDonald and stars Raymond Burr as Lee Quince, Captain of Cavalry, with Vic Perrin as Sergeant Gorse. The script was specially written for Fort Laramie by Kathleen Hite, with sound patterns by Bill James and Ray Kemper, musical supervision by Amerigo Marino. Featured in the cast were Jeanette Nolan, Sam Edwards, Eleanor Tannen, Harry Bartell, Jack Moyles, Shirley Mitchell, Howard McNear, Frank Cady, and Jack Kruschen.
Company, tension! Dismiss.
Next week, another transcribed story of the Northwest frontier and the troopers who fought under Lee Quince, Captain of Cavalry. Comes an emergency, it's savings that talk. When sickness strikes, in time of accident or emergency, it helps to be in good financial shape. That's why it pays and pays to invest in United States savings bonds regularly. Have the money deducted automatically through payroll savings or through your bank's bond-a-month plan. Let the bonds you've saved save you when you need money. The new 3% interest United States savings bond, better than ever. This has been a public service message from CBS Radio.
I would occasionally have 4 shows a day. Some would be at CBS. There were times when the artist entrance was too far for me to run through. They'd have a special page holding a door because the timing was so awful. I mean, it was maybe 5 minutes apart to get from CBS to NBC. And then they would hold a special door.
Running down Sunset Boulevard. Then,
running
right?
down Sunset Boulevard. Well, they would let me park usually at a spot because, and sometimes I would run and cut through the back way. The page would have the door open. I'd get in. Somebody would hand me a script with cuts in it. You always had cuts because the timing was done at the last minute. And I'd go on the air because I also then began to do on Sunday afternoons the Colgate Comedy Hour. Les Tremaine and I did that for a couple of seasons with Bob Crosby. I would do that and Gildersleeve. Fibber was on a Tuesday.
Right.
And I would occasionally do Fibber on a Tuesday and then the Jack Carson show on a Tuesday. Then there was Joan Davis and Rudy Valley in between all of that.
And all this stuff was going on at the same time.
At NBC and CBS. It was such an exciting time. The fans would be lined up in front. You know, I don't know, have you been down? Of course you have, on Vine Street in Hollywood.
Sure.
The fans would be lined up for a block, maybe, all the way around, waiting to get in. They'd let them in a half hour before the show. And at the artist entrance, you had the same fans every day who, you know, they grew up. I mean, I met one lady in Hughes recently shopping, and she said, "Do you remember me?" And she recognized me because I've done quite a bit of television. But it was the most glorious time. I'm sure you've gotten that from every radio actor, haven't you?
Yes, virtually everyone we've spoken to has said the same thing. It was really the best of times. Even people who have certainly gone into even greater success in television.
Right.
They've always said it was so great because, first of all, you didn't have to deal with the makeup and the costumes and all of that, even though you did dress
we
for
dressed,
a nighttime show.
Sure. And we were a family. We still are very, very close. Janet Waldo and I are very close friends. Ginny, Greg, Elvia Allman. It was a nucleus of people that you never grew away from. And they were dear, wonderful people. And television, you know, you do a show, you never see anybody again.